If you are enjoying my channel, then please press the subscribe button to show your appreciation. Thank you. I must say hello to everyone. Today I have a special program. I will be showing a few clips uh, concerning Israel and what is happening right now. And my first clip will be I'm taking it from these journalists here. The host is Piers Morgan. And I would like to speak a little before you watch these videos. Israel must never forget the atrocities, massacre, and murders that Hamas and its militants committed on Israeli soil on October 7, 2023, and must never have a repeat of it ever again. Now, the land of Israel, the Holy Land, belongs only to the children of Israel, which are known as the Jews. Now, in the very first verse in the Jewish Torah, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, so God can do whatever He wants to do with Mother's earth. On today's map, the land that God has given to Israel, stated in the Torah and the Holy Bible, include everything modern-day Israel possesses, plus all the territory occupied by the Palestinians, the West Bank and Gaza, plus some of Egypt and Syria, plus all of Jordan. Now, if the Muslims all around the world study the Quran properly, keenly, they will see that according to Allah, He sent down the Torah to the Jews. The Quran stated that He has sent down the gospel and the Torah. So there is no doubt with the word of God what I am saying. According to the book of Genesis, chapter 15, verse 18, and the book of Joshua, chapter 1 and verse 4, the land that God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, gave to Israel include everything from the Nile River in Egypt to Lebanon. Just think of it. The land of Israel is a God-given inheritance of the Jewish people based on the Holy Torah and the Holy Bible, particularly the books of Genesis, Exodus, Joshua, Numbers, and so forth. For the Lord will not forsake His people for His great name's sake, because it has pleased the Lord to make you, the Israelites, the Jewish people, His people. 1 Samuel 12:22. Nothing can change this preeminent fact. Israel is entitled to the land it has and has been for over 3,000 years. In reality, the Jewish people maintain ties to their historic homeland for more than 3,700 years. God gave the land of Israel to Abraham and to his descendants through Isaac and Jacob, which means the land belongs to the descendants of Jacob, whose name was changed by God to Israel. In other words, the land belongs to the children of Israel, referred to in the New Testament as the Jews. Romans chapter 1, verse 16. The Israelis had many military conflicts fought between various Arab countries. In 1948, to 1949, 1956, 1967, 1973, 1982, 2006, and up till now, they are still fighting for survival. The first war, 1948 to 1949, began when Israel declared itself an independent state, following the United Nations partition of Palestine and 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. They all attacked Israel, but Israel was victorious. Then the Six-Day War, June 1967, fought between Israel and the Arab neighbors, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Algeria, and others also contributed troops and arms to the Arab forces. Israel again was victorious. Then the Yom Kippur War on October 6 to 26, 1973. This time, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel. Israel again was triumphant. Now, how can Israel trust these countries ever again for any peace agreement or two-state solution? Egypt, Syria, and Jordan worked together and attacked Israel a few times. Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Algeria, and others contributed troops and arms to support the Arab forces that attacked Israel. Since the return and settlement of the Jewish people, they established a democratic state and became a democratic nation in 1948. Ever since then, they are being attacked by their Arab neighbors. Look at Lebanon now. Look at Lebanon. What's happening? Israel has to put a stop and an end to all threats and wars that they have been facing since 1948 in their homeland. And no country should ever blame them in doing so. Israel didn't start the war with Hamas. Hamas started that war on October 7th, 2023. Israel didn't want a war with Hezbollah. Hezbollah started the war on 8th of October 2023. Hamas should have known the consequences that will be followed if they dare to attack Israel, which they did. Where was the United Nations and all you guys that are sitting there now? Where were you to condemn Hamas and its militants and most of its citizens of Gaza? If you look very carefully, the attack on that day, many civilians attacked the Israelis. Where was the United Nations? Israel has to defend itself and go after every one of the Hamas leaders and the militants. They have to. They have no other choice. After the world saw what is happening and what was happening, they are calling for a ceasefire. But where was there at the very beginning on the day of attack? And at the same time, when those families and Israel, the Israelis were on their knees, Hezbollah attacked just a few hours after. Where was the United Nations for 1 year, approximately 1 year? Hezbollah is attacking Israel. Shouldn't Israel put a stop? Where is all these journalists? All those who Israel has no rights? They have the right to go after those who are destructive on their people. Now, the war is going now, a ceasefire for Israel against Hezbollah. Israel should never have a ceasefire. Where was the United Nations? Where are all these world leaders when Hezbollah is firing rockets upon rockets day after day? And United Nations is not doing anything. They should have been stopped. Now Israel has to go after them. Israel has no choice. Why should they step back and have a ceasefire? Who is assisting Israel? From the very beginning, Hamas attacked and massacre, murder, killed, raping, burning. And when Israel started to defend himself, the whole world is crying and protesting. That could have been stopped. That war could have been stopped. But where was the world? Now Hezbollah from since day one, October 8th. Where was the world? Now they want to ceasefire and to have talks. Israel should listen to no one. Why? Israel have to go after them and they have to withdraw. Hezbollah has to withdraw from where they are and go beyond the river. Now you'll be listening to these videos, but first I will go back to the land of Israel. Now, when the Israelites move in, there were Canaanites in the promised land that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob has given to Israel. But the Canaanites were almost totally obliterated by the Israelis in the 13th century BC, and the few that remained were quickly assimilated into the Israeli culture. The Philistines were sea-faring people from Crete, the largest of the Greek islands. The Philistines got their name from the Hebrew word Palestine, which actually means invaded land. Philistines invaded Israel in the 12th century BC. They stayed close to the Mediterranean coast. They never settled in Jerusalem, Hebron, or Jericho that the Palestinians claim today. Then it was conquered by Syrians in the 7th century BC. Then it was conquered by the Babylonians. From this time of the Babylonians, the Philistines have disappeared from the pages of history. The Philistines' homeland is not Israel, but the Greek island of Crete. Now, in 135 AD, the Roman Hadrian conquered Jerusalem. Hadrian was very determined to eradicate even the memory of the Jews and erase their connection to the land of Israel. So Hadrian renamed the region calling it Syria Palestina, the Latin translation for Philistines. So Palestinians are not Canaanites and they are not Philistines. Then who are they? Who are the Palestinians? Biologically, they share DNA with Saudi, Iraqis, Syrians, and Jordanians. They are simply Arabs. They never belonged to Gaza. Never in history were there a Palestinian people. Never in history was there a Palestinian nation or Palestinian state. They were all Arabs. Now, the Temple Mount in the old city of Jerusalem is very secret to both the Christians and the Jews. Both groups claim historical events gave them the right of ownership. The Temple Mount is the holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest in Islam. Muslim tradition said that Muhammad traveled here to the Al-Aqsa Mosque on a night journey, and that tradition formed the basis for the Palestinians' claim to Jerusalem, which is a false claim. But there is no record that Prophet Muhammad had ever been there. Even his army didn't arrive there until 5 years after his death. The city of Jerusalem never mentioned even once in the Quran, but the Hebrew Bible mentioned it over 600 times. Now please look at the video. Thank you.
Well, let's debate all that now with my panel, the host of Democracy-ish podcast, Wajah Ali, the Israel Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation, Fleur Hassan, Iranian-American attorney and activist Elika Lebon, and from the Grey Zone, the journalist Aaron Mate. Well, welcome to all of you. Fleur Hassan Nahum, I just spoke there to the ambassador of Lebanon, extremely concerned about what is happening, and in particular, this breaking news from Israel's army chief that these strikes on Lebanon are in preparation for the possible entry of troops. Is it really a sensible move by Israel to consider another ground war, given what has been going on in Gaza for the past year?
Or was it a sensible move on the 8th of October to start a war from Lebanon into Israel, evacuating 100,000 Israelis who don't live anywhere near 10 kilometers from the border? Why did they start that? There's no territorial claim. What was the point of that? Maybe, and this is what the ambassador, of course, didn't mention, and I'm sure Elika will back me up on this, maybe they're all really the servants of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they're doing their bidding for them. But what's happening at the moment is actually something very curious, and that is that the Islamic Republic of Iran is currently in a charm offensive in New York, and at the same time throwing Hezbollah under the bus for a war that it probably asked them to do in order to help their friend Yahya Sinwar. So the point is this: is Israel supposed to be attacked and not defend itself? Is Israel supposed to go for a ceasefire after its people, its women have been raped, its children have been burnt, and a war has started against them? We've been in this story since 1948, when we were attacked by all the countries around Israel. Today, that has been replaced with Islamic Republic proxies and militias. And this is where we find ourselves. Do we want war? No. We want peace. We're not in Lebanon. He's talking about UN. He's talking about resolutions. It's very simple. If he wants this all to stop, very, very simple. Just comply with Resolution 1701, which says very simply this: Hezbollah has to go behind north of the Litani River, and there's not supposed to be any armed terrorist south of the Litani River, and it's all over. The question is not to me, the question is why on the 8th of October, Hezbollah decided to start throwing what is now...
Take your right hand, shake it out.
...into Israel. If the UK, if in Dover, France threw 10,000 missiles from Calais, here's what would happen.
Well, I I think we would certainly robustly defend ourselves. Let me go to Wajah Ali for your response there to what Fleur Hassan Nahum was saying and what the ambassador was saying, because clearly there are very strong opinions on both sides here. There had been for the last year. What do you believe is likely to happen next, and what do you think of what is happening?
Yeah, so I think we all agree that nothing justifies the war crimes and terrorism that was done on October 7th, but to Israel, October 7th justifies committing war crimes and terrorism all around the world. Israel sounds like Dr. Strangelove. It sounds like a manic, violent creature right now that has said, this is their quote, "We want de-escalation through escalation." That's like saying no fighting in the war room. That's like saying we will bomb them in order to save them. That's like saying we will find life in death. Israel has already invaded Lebanon in 1982. 15 to 20,000 people were killed, mostly civilians. It wanted to weaken the PLO. You know what happened as a result of that? The PLO was weakened, but something called Hezbollah rose. Then Hamas rose. 2006, Israel and Lebanon had a war. Many civilians were killed. It was a stalemate. Now, almost a year into the October 7th war and the Gaza war, since then, 41,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly children, peers, in Gaza. More children have been killed in Gaza than in all the war zones combined in the past 2 years.
Now, who asked for that? This guy, if you listen to him quite well, he is comparing so many died in Israel and so many died in Gaza. Hezbollah is using civilians for human shield. They don't care if you're babies or who you are. And they are firing to the Israelis and to the Israeli nation. What do you expect Israel to do? Then again, you're not coming out and telling the world, Hamas, they were hiding in schools, mosques, churches, and they're firing upon the Israeli. What do you expect the Israeli to do? Although Israelis, the IDF, is warning the civilians to move out, Hamas kept holding them and firing missiles into Israel. Then you're comparing how many people died. Who is the cause? You cannot blame Israel for the death of all those people in Palestine. You have to blame Hamas and the United Nations and yourself for not protesting against Hamas at the very beginning. Only now you can open your mouth and try to criticize Israel. They has a right to defend themselves and go after Hamas so they can never come back again. As Islam teaches in your Quran, check your Quran, Allah said, which was Muhammad said, continue fighting as long as you have the upper hand. And if you don't have the upper hand, surrender for a period of time until you get the upper hand again, then attack again. So what do you expect Israel to do? The IDF? To fold their arms? And then Hezbollah never realized what is happening in Gaza, for them to keep firing and firing and firing and firing. And now the whole world wants to cease fire again. What for? You have to go after Hamas and Hezbollah and tell them stop this nonsense. If you keep firing upon the Israelis, they're going to fire back and they're going to come very hard. So stop this nonsense to criticize Israel. It's you have the fault, people like you around the world, to be one-sided.
Israel right now is bombing Lebanon. 27,000 people have been displaced, over 2,000 people injured, over 500 people killed, 50 children killed. To Israel right now, everyone is an enemy. Everyone is Hezbollah. Everyone is Hamas, right? Nurses are killed. The refugee camps are killed. I've been talking on your show for the past year. Each time I come on, there's a fresh new horror, right? Palestinians go to the south. You got Palestinians, the refugee camps. They're bombed. Children are bombed. Journalists are bombed. Leon Panetta, who was the former CIA director, has said what Israel did in Lebanon, specifically booby-trapping the phones, is an act of terrorism. That's Leon Panetta. The United Nations Commissioner on Human Rights said that same.
In a state of war, Israel has the right, because only the Hezbollah, the army, they use those devices. And if one of two children got caught up, either their father or their brothers or somebody has this device very close up to them. In war, you can do whatever you want to get to your enemies before they get to you. So don't criticize that. They didn't do it in appliances that children are using and go after them. Israel is a democratic nation, and according to international law, that is not terrorism. Hezbollah has no laws and rules and regulation to international law. Israel is adhering to international law. That is why the war delayed and prolonged so long in Gaza.
Action. It's a one-year anniversary. Netanyahu wants to escape accountability. He wants to escape the inquiry, asking, how come you didn't stop the war, which, by the way, you knew was going to happen. You knew the attack was going to happen, but he was too busy with his corruption charges. He needs to stay in power to avoid from resigning and possibly going to jail. And also a perpetual war will help the supremacists in his cabinet, like Ben-Gvir, who literally is like the member of the KKK, who now is the national security minister, and people like Smotrich, who have openly said, Piers, that they have a genocidal plan. They want everything, river to the sea, and to push out Palestinians. So I condemn, I'll do this for you, Piers. I condemn the war crimes. I condemn Hezbollah launching rockets. That's a war crime. I condemn Hamas launching rockets. That's a war crime. Do my panelists condemn the occupation, Israel's killing of civilians, and the war crimes it is committing in Gaza and in Lebanon? I leave it to the panel.
Well, let me ask Elika Lebon. Do you condemn that?
I condemn everything that has been caused by the jihadists, and this is not my opinion. This is based on causal reasoning. You kidnap people and you take them to a different place. What other option does a sovereign nation have but to return its citizens? What else? There's only two options here, right? You either release the hostages or they have to come and be rescued. So the fact that Hamas has stubbornly refused to return these hostages means that Israel has no other choice. And so what you're looking at here is Hamas persistently putting the Palestinian people in a position to be slaughtered in this way. And you know what else that's so much worse than that? When people keep coming up with these numbers, 41,000 people killed. Why? Why are 41,000 people killed? Okay. Why is it not that 41,000 people in Israel have been killed despite all of these attacks? Because Israel invests in protecting its citizens. What does Hamas do? Hamas starts a war and then hides in its terror tunnels, okay, and leaves its civilians, its children vulnerable above the ground to be exploded like cowards hiding in tunnels. So yes, I agree 41,000 is an awful number. First of all, we haven't separated the combatants, but we know that children have been killed, and the children have been killed because of Hamas. Everybody that is being killed is because of jihadists, and there is not one fact that you can make that doesn't start with the jihadists. And when the jihadists bury themselves wherever they are, whether they're in Lebanon, whether they're in Gaza, whether they're in Iran, whether they're in Syria, they are making the people of that nation, the people they are burying themselves amongst, vulnerable to being killed in this way. So yes, I absolutely condemn those deaths, and I absolutely blame the jihadists for that. And first of all, to go back to this claim that Hezbollah never started this war, from the 8th of October, okay, started launching, by this point, over 11,000 rockets into Israel. 96,000 people in northern Israel have been displaced. 10% of Israel's landmass has been depopulated, okay, 11 months deep. What is it exactly that you expect Israel to do? At this point, civilians are out of their homes, children are out of their schools. What do you expect Israel to do in the final instance where there is a precision strike on Hezbollah terrorists, okay? Hezbollah terrorists, the world wants to claim that this is an international war crime. Like, what should Israel do? Just bend over and keep accepting it? None of these things are acceptable to you people. Targeted strikes, unacceptable. Pages, unacceptable. What is acceptable to stop these terrorists from persistently and belligerently attacking Israel? And to make the claim, first of all, to make the claim that they are doing this on behalf of the Palestinians is absolutely outrageous. You want to say that, oh, we're fighting for the Palestinians because of the occupation and this oppressive military state. What about Hezbollah's oppressive military state? What about Hezbollah's state within a state that has undermined Lebanon's sovereignty? What about the fact that Hezbollah goes to Syria and massacres people on behalf of Assad? What about the fact that Hezbollah goes to Iran and massacres, rapes innocent Iranians? So why don't we just say that everything that Israel's doing is in behalf of the innocent Iranians, the innocent Syrians, and the innocent Lebanese? You know why you don't say that? Because it sounds absolutely ridiculous. It is a red herring. It is a red herring to claim that Hezbollah is acting on behalf of Palestinians when what they're doing is exactly what they said in their charter, which the Islamic Republic created them for, which is to create a second Islamic Republic in Lebanon and to destroy Israel. That is their goals. It is time to be honest about that.
Okay.
Didn't hear a condemnation of Israel's war crimes there.
Oh, I absolutely did. What I said was that the jihadists are to blame by the laws of causal reasoning.
All right. Let me bring in Aaron Martin. Aaron, we are nearly a year into this war in Gaza. It now looks increasingly likely there might be another phase of this war erupting, or already has erupted, in Lebanon. The question I have wrestled with since October the 7th is not whether Israel has a right to defend itself if it's attacked, but what is the proportionate response which should be tolerated of a nation that comes under that attack. And that's setting aside the history of the conflict. When you are attacked as they were on October the 7th, you obviously have to fight back hard, particularly as Hamas said, we're going to keep doing this. If Hezbollah wants to respond to what happened on October the 7th by within hours, unleashing rockets at Israel and carrying on doing that for the next year, again, Israel has a right to defend itself. The question is, what is proportionate? Do you accept, first of all, Aaron, that Israel has a right, if not a duty, to its people to defend itself? And if you accept that, then what is proportionate? Who determines that?
Every state, including Israel, has the right to defend itself. But let's examine what that right entails. If we're talking about October 7th, when yes, some Hamas militants committed atrocities, they're on camera. There was a claim before, by the way, that there was rape by Hamas. There actually isn't evidence for a single case of rape, even 1 year later. I'm happy
I'm sorry. I've got to stop.
Hold on a second.
No, I have to correct you there. I've seen
my point.
There has been widespread evidence of rape and sexual abuse against women on October the 7th.
There hasn't. There actually hasn't. We'll debate that some other time. We'll debate that some other time. I'm going to finish my point. There is not a single shred of evidence for it, but we'll debate that some other time. Listen, we're talking about October 7th. Israel has a right on October 7th to defend its people. Let me finish my... Piers, every time I come on here, I can't talk. Okay, let me talk.
To be fair,
I'm talking.
Aaron,
I didn't interrupt you.
Aaron, okay.
I didn't interrupt anybody.
Aaron, look what I would say. You say every time you come on here this happens, but you just started with an unbelievably inflammatory and incorrect statement, which is that there was no sexual abuse of women on October the 7th. There are multiple.
We'll debate that some other time.
Of sexual
It's
abuse
a fact.
and rape.
No. Okay. There's not. Anyway, listen. If we're talking about October 7th, I'm gonna finish my sentence.
Let him speak, please.
Okay, I didn't interrupt you. They said multiple inflammatory things. I didn't interrupt them. Thank you.
All right. Finish your
If we're
point.
talking about on October 7th, yes.
Let him speak,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you. If we're talking about if we're talking about on October 7th, yes, Israel has the right to defend its civilians if they're being attacked. Okay, but Israel is an occupying power, and it's been an occupying power for decades. Occupiers don't have the right to defend their occupation. Israel doesn't.
This guy is talking about occupation. Israel is not occupying Palestinian land. Palestinians are the ones who are occupying Israeli land. Israelis are not occupiers. Their land belongs to the Israelis, the Jewish people, not Palestine. So don't ever mention that. Study your Quran on your book.
Have a right to doesn't have the right to fire a single bullet into Gaza. It has obligations. Occupiers have obligations. And if Israel wanted peace and security, what it would do is join the entire world, join the International Court of Justice, which just ruled that Israel doesn't have the right to control a single inch of the West Bank or Gaza, and end the occupation and address its decades-long attacks on Palestinians, and also let
the International Court is a biased court. Check the majority of those judges that are sitting there. Who are they? What country are they from? What religion are they? Are they Muslims? Muslims can never like the Jews according to your Quran. Study your Quran to kill the Jews and the Christians. They cannot be friends. You cannot be friends. Muslims can never be friends with Jews. It's stated in the Quran. They cannot be your friends. In war, there is no murder. In war, Hamas is war. They started war with Israel. So don't ever say that they are committing murder. They are not. They are being justified whatever they have been doing. And they stick to international law. Remember that Israel is a democratic nation. Hamas, they are terrorists. They don't have any laws and regulations. So don't talk nonsense. Please. You're young and brainless. You know, sometimes education makes the fool more foolish, like you.
And not accept Palestinians as equal human beings. That's the fundamental problem here.
Okay. Fly Hassan, no, I mean...
I don't know where to start. I really don't know where to start. First of all, he's talking about mass murder on October 8th. We were attacked on October 7th. We hadn't even gone in on October 8th. So I really don't understand what you're talking about. Secondly, he completely
You were waging the longest military occupation in the world.
Yes, well, let's go to that.
No
In 2005, Israel left the Gaza Strip. Now, at that point, the Gazans could have done one of two things. Turn it into a wonderful pilot for a Palestinian state, which you think they want, and I don't believe they actually do. And instead, they turned it into Mogadishu, into Beirut, as it were. Instead of investing in its people, they invested in tunnels to attack and to use their people as human shields. That's just a fact. Tell me, why did they not build a beautiful place in 2005 until today? You know why? Because Hamas came into power. Hamas is not interested in a state. Hamas is interested in destroying the Jewish state. And that is the crux of the conflict. And you're on the wrong side of history. One day you're going to wake up and realize this. At the bottom line is that the conflict is not because there isn't a Palestinian state. The conflict is because there's a Jewish state that has never been accepted. And that's why in 1947, they didn't accept the partition plan. And that is why after Oslo in 2000, they didn't accept the two-state solution. We gave them 93% of the West Bank and the entire Gaza. That's why in 2009, an even more generous peace deal, and they didn't accept it. And the bottom line is this: They don't want a state. They want, and they're invested emotionally, logistically, and militarily in the destruction of the state of Israel. Israel wants to live in peace. We don't want to rule in other people.
Okay,
It's
but Fleur,
different
all right,
from
Fleur,
other people
but Fleur, let me ask you this.
By the way,
All right, Fleur, hang on, please. Hang on, let me ask a question.
Arabs
So, Fleur,
in our
let me ask you a
country that
question.
live side by side with Jews.
Yeah, Fleur, here's what I don't get about what you just said, is that you talk about destruction and the threat of destruction. And I get that. Hamas is wedded to destroying Israel, as are Hezbollah.
It's in their
Fine.
charter.
Fine. But what is Israel doing right now in Gaza? You are destroying it. You're destroying Gaza and you're
We're trying to
killing
get our hostages
tens of
back and
thousands of
dismantle
people
the terrorist
in the process. No, but
group.
you are destroying Gaza in the most extraordinarily brutal manner.
Okay.
And you're going
Yes.
after...
Yes.
You're
All right.
going
How
after...
do you
Hang, let me finish.
I would like to answer Piers Morgan. Why would you make such a statement that Israel is destroying Gaza? Aren't Hamas hiding in all these buildings? Aren't you seeing that? From day one, they're in all these buildings, all these apartments, all these homes. What do you expect the IDF to do? It's to bomb them. They have a right, as long as they have arms in those buildings, according to international law. You have all these military equipments there. They have a right to bomb it. They are not doing this thing deliberately to bomb all the places like that. Wherever they are, wherever they set bombs and all these boogies, traps, they have a right to bomb it. What are you talking? What question are you asking? Come on. As a journalist, you have good experience. But don't try to put Israel down. They are not destroying deliberately. They have to go where they are. They are in buildings, they are in tunnels, they are in hospitals. As long as they have military equipment firing at Israel, according to international laws, they have the right to bomb those places. And all those places that are being bombed, there is where they have their ammunitions, their bombs, their missiles. What the hell is going on?
Finish, please. You're going after Hamas now in the very areas where you told the civilian population to go to. And in the process, you're killing a lot of innocent people. How can that be just?
Hamas is using their own tactics. The IDF is asking the people to move out. Then Hamas is moving back. They have tunnels. They go in and out, in and out. That's why they have to move according to instructions. If you are told, move from there and go to that block, then they found out these people, these criminals, have moved to the block where you are. They have to ask you to move again. In wars, you have to follow instructions. Even 1,000 times they ask you to, because they have to go after the terrorists.
Hamas went into the humanitarian corridors because that's what they do. Exactly what Elika says. That is their modus operandi. They don't build tunnels under schools.
Well, if
They
you
build
know that, why do you
schools on
send
top of
people to these
tunnels.
specific areas?
We send them areas thinking that those areas are going to be areas we're not going to attack, and then Hamas throws rockets at us and attack our soldiers. Look, ultimately, we want two things. We want the dismantlement of Hamas, who is an existential threat to the state of Israel, and we want our hostages back. If that happens in an hour, it's over. If Hezbollah moved north of the Litani in an hour, it's over. And both of you are in the wrong side of history here, because the Islamic Republic of Iran, who is the big puppet master of all of this, they've got much wider ambitions than Israel. They're going to be coming everywhere. They are the Hitler of the 1930s, and that is what we're facing. So you two can keep deluding yourselves that this is about Israel, and what a coincidence, the only Jewish state in the world, and somehow we're the aggressors. You know what? Thousands of years we've heard the same libels that we're hearing right now. This is just another form of it, but we will survive and we will prevail, because bigger people than the Islamic Republic of Iran
I mean, look, I have a lot of issues with what Israel is doing in Gaza. I have issues about the way they're rapidly escalating what they're doing in Lebanon. But I also have a massive issue with what Hamas represent and what they represent to Israelis and what Hezbollah represent, because they make no pretense. They want to destroy Israel. They want to get rid of Israel. And if you are Israel and you're an Israeli living in Israel, they represent an existential threat to your existence. What else is Israel supposed to do? Sit back and let these people destroy them, or defend themselves as best they can? I mean, that seems to me to be the crux of the Israeli side of this, which is, what else are they supposed to do?
So the Israeli side is de-escalation through escalation, perpetual war, occupation, with the boots on their neck.
I want to answer that question for you. If Israel don't escalate, they will not stop. So war bring peace. You idiot. War brings peace to the aggressor. You can continue now.
War, occupation. Benjamin.
Why are they being killed? Is Israel attacking them, or they are attacking the Jews? You cannot be one-sided. Israel will not attack you if you don't attack them. We have law and order all over the world, but some people like you don't understand what is law and order. Breaching the law, you have to face the consequences. As is mentioned in your debate right now, they don't like the Jews. They don't want the Jews around. They want all of Israel. So what are you talking about? That Palestinians are being murdered, the West Bank, Palestinians are being murdered. The Israelis, Israel is a democratic nation, and they are abiding all the time with international law. Look how many Arabs you have living in Israel. They are in the army, they are in the government, they are in the police force. Are you blind? All you can say, they are killing Palestinians. How many Palestinians? What are they doing? Why are they in prison? They are being taught in school to kill Jewish people, to kill them. It's their land. They are teaching them that the Jews come and steal their land. Come on, learn your history. You're young brain. You will only jump, like a kangaroo. Bring the facts out. The Jews are killing the Palestinians in the West Bank. How many died? Aren't they attacking? Aren't they attacking the Jewish people? So you want the IDF to fold their arms? Don't be one-sided. Come on. Only Israel, the Jewish people, are bad and murderers. You are the people who are doing the action all over the world. Look at Nigeria. Nobody is talking about those places.
Netanyahu has yet again crossed another red line of Biden and said, I'm going to expand settlements, which are also illegal.
Which I think, which by the way, I think is completely disgraceful. I think the willful, deliberate expansion of the settlements during the past year is disgusting and should not be happening. And is another reason for me why Netanyahu should not be leading Israel. I think he's just.
Well, and also, the one thing that Pierce, the one thing for safety and security, right? Because I think you and me, and I think some people on this panel, want safety and security for Israelis, for Palestinians, for Muslims, for Christians, for the region. The one thing Israel has never tried, it has always tried military solutions. They've always failed. I just give you a brief history. We can go back longer if we want. Military solutions have always failed. You know the one thing it has never tried? Ending the occupation, giving Palestinians the right to self-determination. If it ends the occupation,
Yeah, but okay, so I would say this. Wajah, I would say there will be. Hang on, don't all talk, please. Wajah, hang on. Let me handle this. Wajah, here's what I would say to that. They did give Hamas the chance to show what they would do if they ran Gaza in 2005, and Hamas, ever since then, spent billions of dollars that was given to them on building a highly sophisticated tunnel network for which they could basically operate as a terrorist organization, which is wedded from their charter to destroying Israel. So they have had the chance of Israel. Hang on. I would say this. I still believe that Israel has had a form of occupation since then over Gaza, because they've had the ability, as we saw at the start of the war, to turn off the power, to turn off the water supply, to control what food goes in and out. That is the behavior of an occupying force. But they did give Hamas the chance to show what they would do if they would govern. And I can't believe there is any Palestinian in Gaza that thinks that Hamas did anything but squander that opportunity in the most brazen and despicable manner, culminating in this outrageous attack last October, which was always going to goad Israel into this kind of response. If you go and kill 1,200 people in Israel in the manner they killed them and boast about it to the world through your GoPro cameras, actually showing what you're doing to women, children, to Holocaust survivors, you kidnap over 200 people, you're killing a newborn baby, for God's sake. If you do all that and you wound nearly 7,000 more, many of them irreparably, then you are going to get a massive response. Hamas knew that, and they knew that the casualties would be thousands of their own people. Why would you do that? Why do that? So I come back to, I have problems with everybody in this story, right? I really do, because
as you should.
Yeah,
as you should. I agree with you.
But these are the issues. These are the issues on the Hamas Hezbollah side, which really I don't see the answer. If you're ready to destroy it, Alika,
terrorist groups.
Listen,
Let me bring in Alika.
So the entire arguments that are being made here are based on revisionist history. That's first things first. The even way that you frame Hezbollah as the victim, as the non-aggressor, to where you frame Israel as escalating despite Hezbollah's repeated history of aggression, okay? First of all, the way you even describe Hezbollah's inception is wrong. Let's talk about Hezbollah's inception, which was after the 1979 revolution. Let me finish. After the 1979 revolution in Iran, Hezbollah, okay, was inspired by this, and Assad visited Iran and asked Khomeini, what can we do for you? Khomeini said, give me a passage to Syria, to Lebanon, so I can export my radical ideologies over to Lebanon. They did that, and then they started killing the Shiite Muslims in the north of Lebanon while there was an invasion by Israel from the south. Why was there an invasion from the south? There was an invasion because the PLO were in southern Lebanon firing rockets into Israel after they just got expelled from Jordan because they were doing the same thing, hijacking planes, okay, landing them on revolutionary airports, blowing them up in front of international media. Then they go to southern Lebanon and they start destroying internal political dynamics in southern Lebanon. Now you have the Christian Maronites and the Muslims fighting each other in the first Lebanon civil war, okay? They destroyed Lebanon from within just because of the desire to launch its rockets from Lebanon into Israel. Then it went up to Beirut and started fighting with the Christian Maronites to assert domination in Lebanon. Why? Because they are jihadists. And then what happens in 1978, which is the first invasion of Israel into Lebanon. Why? Because the PLO did an attack on a bus in Israel that killed 38 people. Israel goes in to try and take out the PLO. And then the UN requires them to retreat, and they retreat, and then they send their UN interim forces for Lebanon, okay, to take out the PLO. The UN runs away, and the PLO comes back, continues its attack, okay? The second invasion into Lebanon, because of the continued attacks, they go in once more, and because the PLO doesn't leave, they have to create this occupation, right? And then as soon as they remove the occupation in 2000, with Ehud Barak and Clinton, what happens is is that Hezbollah advances to the border of Israel and starts attacking again. And then comes the UN resolution 1701 requiring not only that Hezbollah stays 10 kilometers back from the northern border, okay, but also that all of these militias in Lebanon have to disband and there can only be a militarized Lebanese government. Israel abided. Who did not abide? Hezbollah. Then what did Hezbollah do for 18 years? For 18 years in the zone that they were not allowed to be, they started expanding their military capacities up to 200,000 munitions, and then finally on October 8th started attacking. And then when Israel responded with that pager attack, why did they do that? Why did they do that? Because the commanders, the leaders of Hezbollah had a plan to attack northern Galilee and do a second October 7th, kidnap hostages with a ground invasion. Now you tell me, what should Israel do?
Okay. Well,
De-escalation through escalation.
okay, hang on. I'll go to
It's
Aaron.
always easy for
Aaron,
them to blame
let Aaron Marte respond to that. What Israel's supposed to do in that eventuality?
What Israel should do is, for the first time in its history, abandon its quest for regional domination and supremacy. Starting in 1947, just a brief tour through history. Yes, Israel accepted partition publicly. Palestinians didn't. It's not nice to welcome the partition of your land, which is being stolen by foreigners. But privately, Israeli leaders, including David Ben-Gurion, said, we won't accept partition. We'll define for ourselves what our borders are. And that's why they proceeded to expel hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, including into Lebanon, creating this crisis. They refused to address that. Instead of addressing their expulsion of Palestinians and theft of their land, they've stolen more. In 1967. In 1982, the reason Israel invades Lebanon is because the PLO was there, and the PLO at that time was joining the rest of the world in accepting a compromise of a Palestinian state. Google the Arab Peace Initiative. It's been renewed many times to Israel. Israel's been offered by all the Arab states and the PLO, with even Iran joining them and accepting this. Everybody recognizing Israel, everybody making peace in exchange for Israel ending its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. That's a major compromise for Palestinians. Israel is so hell-bent on domination, occupation, and supremacy, it's refused even to accept a Palestinian compromise. When Hamas tried to join that after 2005, when Israel withdrew, Israel still put Gaza under a complete siege, prevented any basic goods from getting in, carried out routine massacres. Even when Hamas leaders, including Ismail Haniyeh, who Israel recently killed, said, we will accept the Palestinian state, Israel will not accept it because Israel wants to dominate that region. That's the fundamental problem here. And as it was previously said, as long as Israel insists on supremacy and occupation, people are going to resist it. People will resist it. It's true. Google the Arab Peace Initiative, 2002. Google it.
2000. What happened with the Clinton parameters, 2001?
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened. You know what? I'll tell you what happened. The former Israeli foreign minister, Shlomo Ben-Ami, who was there at Camp David, do you want to know what he said? He was there at Camp David. This is the foreign minister who made the Camp David offer. He said, if I were Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David as well. You know why? Because he recognized that Israel insisted on keeping the major West Bank settlement blocks that make a Palestinian state impossible. That's the fundamental problem here. You don't see Palestinians as equal human beings, and you reserve the right to steal their land, and that's why you're interrupting me, because you can't handle the truth. That's the problem here. Stop being a supremacist, stop stealing land, and you can have peace.
Here's, let's go to 2024. Can I just say one quick thing?
Okay, let me bring you Wajahat, please.
Just one quick thing. Let's go to 2024. Let's just go to this year.
Yes.
Who has rejected two states? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Who has crossed every single one of President Biden's lines? Netanyahu. Who has said he's going to continue occupying the West Bank? Netanyahu. Who has said he's going to continue expanding settlements? Netanyahu. Who has put the worst, most...
My friend, please study your history. The land, all of Gaza, and all of the West Bank belong to Israel. Palestinians don't belong there. Please review your history and learn it well before you ever come back on one of these shows. It's very embarrassing when you don't know your history. You learn a lot in university, but what the professors know, that's what they'll be teaching you, unless you do a lot of research ahead of your professors. Both of you guys. Like a young lion, you just jump around with the little knowledge you have accumulated. Do you know what is wisdom? A lot of people don't know what is wisdom. Wisdom is all what you have accumulated from your education and experience. Then you achieve wisdom, how to apply your knowledge. You guys are just babies in political science. Learn well. The land, all of it, belong to the Jewish people. Continue.
So who has said he's going to continue occupying the West Bank? Netanyahu. Who has said he's going to continue expanding settlements? Netanyahu. Who has put the worst, most extreme, radical, right-wing members of the Jewish public in his cabinet? People like Ben Gvir and Smotrich are openly genocidal. Prime Minister Netanyahu. Who has continued bombing civilians, like you mentioned, Piers, right? Told these Palestinians to go to the south, it's a safe zone, and bomb that safe zone? Netanyahu. There has been a peace deal on the table. President Biden announced it in the summer. He said it was Israel's plan. He said ceasefire, return of hostages, humanitarian aid. Who has rejected it since June? Netanyahu. Who is protesting Netanyahu? The family members of the hostages, because they realize he does not care. He does not care. And who is actually protesting this war in Lebanon? The family members of the hostages, because they realize if this war, God forbid, expands, it means that their family members won't come back. When there was a temporary ceasefire in November, 105 Israeli hostages came back. Since then, less than 10. And when all is said and done, Piers, most likely Israel will have accidentally killed more of its Israeli hostages through this war than it has saved. So the buck is right now with Netanyahu, and as we have discussed on your show, he's a corrupt criminal who has 80% of the public against him, mass protests, and he realizes if the war ends, he will have to resign, the government will fall apart, and he will most likely go to jail. So war we have. De-escalation through escalation. It's a recipe for genocidal
Let me ask you a
madness.
question. I have a question for you that's actually a very important question. You're saying that this two-state solution should be accepted, okay? We've seen through this history of the occupation of the West Bank, first of all, the occupation has foiled
Thank you for admitting it.
Wait. At least 500 terrorist attacks in 2022. Now, before the Second Intifada, there were actually no checkpoints, okay? There were no checkpoints. And then after the Palestinians rejected the Camp David summit, which actually offered to remove the entire occupation, the settlements offered two states, okay?
That's such a lie. Even Israeli leaders don't say that. Even Israeli leaders don't. You're lying through your teeth. And there were checkpoints too, by the way.
You don't interrupt. After that, there was a second intifada. There was a second intifada that killed over 1,000 Israelis in Tel Aviv, and then the checkpoints were installed. Okay, so my question to you is that you want to end the occupation. Everyone wants to end the occupation. What is happening? In fact, one of those proposals was that the PLO would help to foil terrorist attacks going into Israel. You know why that's so important? Because of the topography of the land, where the West Bank is on a higher plane, okay, which is strategically at an advantage to throw rockets into Israel. And so Israel asked the PLO to collaborate with the Shin Bet to prevent those terrorist attacks happening. Now, you want a two-state solution. Let me ask you, from the jihadist perspectives, where is their commitment to stop the terrorism if the occupation is removed? Just like it was removed from Gaza, and then instantly Hamas started firing rockets back into Israel.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
see,
where is
okay,
the-
let me put that to Wajah, because I think it's a reasonable question, because even if Israel did everything you urge them to do, you're still left with Hamas and Hezbollah, two terror groups who are wedded via their charter. It's explicitly stated in both cases that they are wedded to the eradication of Israel. Nothing changes just because Israel decides to say, we end the occupation, we end this, we end that, we give you everything you want. It's not going to change the ideology of people that want to destroy them, is it? Or is it? Are Hamas and Hezbollah suddenly going to go, you know what? Thanks very much. We're now going to have peace. Makes no sense.
It's a good question. It's a good
They're
question.
living in La La Land.
Ending
and they
the
think that's what's
listen,
going on.
I'll answer.
Let Wajah
in good
answer.
faith.
Yeah.
I've always tried to answer in good faith. Ending the occupation will be the game changer. Giving people freedom will be a game changer. Everyone, every single person on earth that has ever been occupied has resisted the occupation. As you have seen, look, they first went after PLO. PLO got weakened. Then Hezbollah came. Suppose they destroy Hezbollah, which they won't. Suppose they'll destroy Hamas. It's been a year. They won't. It's the idea of a resistance, and I agree with you. They're acting in a way which is terroristic and also commits war crimes. The idea will persist as long as you keep occupying. The one thing Israel has never done is stop the occupation. And number two, throughout its entire history, especially when after Oslo, you know what's it's increased? Illegal settlements in the West Bank. What's the excuse? Hamas doesn't run the West Bank. It is expanding the West Bank settlements. And for those who don't know, imagine like Swiss cheese, right? There's holes in the Swiss cheese. The holes are their settlements, expanding. What's left is this barely, you've seen this, Pierce, you know the map, this pathetic small piece of land that's left for the Palestinians. So no matter what happens, I'm sorry to say this, Palestinians are screwed. Yet still they say, fine, give us this pathetic moth-eaten ridden land because you have expanded the settlements. We'll still take it. Give us freedom. At the end of the day, every single group on earth wants freedom. And that's the one thing Israel refuses to do.
Okay, let me bring in. Hang on. Let me bring in Fleur here.
Let them be
Let me
free.
bring in Fleur. Right. I want to ask you this, Fleur. You can respond. But I want to ask you this: why should Palestinians not be afforded the exact same human rights as Israelis?
They want their land, or do they want to be part of Israel? That's my question to you.
No, I've asked you a question. Why should they not? Why should they not, in principle?
Do they want their own state?
Why should they?
My question is,
Fleur,
they
answer
want
the
this
question.
state.
Why should they not be entitled to the same
Yes.
human rights that you have and that I have?
They should.
But they don't
They
have them.
shouldn't. Well, one second.
They
Let's
absolutely
talk
should,
about
but they
Oslo,
need to
because we're
respect
talking.
their
Let Fleur
We're
talk.
talking like we're talking as if Israel hadn't tried 5 times already to create a state. That's how we're talking here. So what happened in Oslo? In Oslo,
Yes, because it's
the
not
West
true.
Bank,
They haven't.
Judea and
They never
Samaria. Okay, 1 second, Rape Janaya. In
You need to
Judea and
read
Samaria, Judea and Samaria was split into area A, B, and C. The majority of Palestinian cities, where the majority of the Palestinian population live, are in area A's and B. The areas that we're talking about, really about Swiss cheese and all these metaphors that you all like to use, is area C, where the least amount of Palestinians live. Now, if they really wanted autonomy, and Tony Blair was here for about 10 years trying to create state institutions, and he failed. Why did he fail? Because you either have murderous terrorist groups or you have corruption. Why did Khania have $4 billion? Why does Mahmoud Abbas have private jets? Why are his sons billionaires? Why? Because all of the money that the West has given these entities, these government entities, to create a state, to start creating state institutions, to do better for their people, to create an economy, all of that has gone into the pockets. So what do we have? We have a Palestinian leadership which is either believes in the destruction of the state of Israel, or the ones who don't, they just steal. So what are you left with? I really want a Palestinian Mandela. I really want a Palestinian Gandhi. I want to live in peace. I don't want to rule another people, and nobody in Israel does. But what do we get every time we try to give a territorial compromise? We get terror cells and murder. What happened after the 2000 Oslo deal? What happened? What happened was the Second Intifada, with thousands of people, Jews and Arabs, in the city of Jerusalem, in my city, dead on the street. Terrorism in cafes and in buses. Why did that happen? If the terms weren't great, then why didn't Arafat continue negotiating? And I'll tell you this, and I'll repeat it again, because the problem of this conflict is not that a Palestinian state doesn't exist. It's that a Jewish state exists, and they've never, ever ideologically accepted it. And why do I know? Because they keep telling me. Because they have charters. Because that's their constitution. And that's the educational system. And that's the media. Enough with Google. Don't you read anything else?
All right, listen.
Yeah, Google Arab League Peace Initiative.
Okay, listen.
Google Arab League. That's the Arab League offering
And the
Israel
Palestinians
full
rejected
organization
Hang on,
against the
everyone.
occupation. If you want to talk about Palestinian Mandelas, if you want to, excuse me, if you want to talk about Palestinian Mandelas, they exist. For example, in March
Where
2018,
are they?
thousands of Palestinian Mandelas marched peacefully in Gaza in the Great March of Return, calling for their basic rights. What did Israel do? It gunned them down with snipers, maiming people,
They were
paralyzing them.
Hamas
That's the Palestinian
terrorists who
Mandela. Yeah,
they
but
were
they're people of
Oh, you're
Gaza
saying
who've
that
been
the
besieged for
Palestinian
decades,
Mandelas
wanting their
in
basic
Hamas?
rights.
Are you saying the
You have
Palestinian Mandelas in Hamas?
complete.
Have you ever been to Gaza? Honestly, you people are
They're
talking
the
like
people.
armchair
Yes, I have been to
activists.
Gaza. Yes, I have.
Okay, sure.
I have been to Gaza actually, and
You know
I met
what?
the
I can
people
answer your
there.
question.
Lucky you're not
I
a
can answer
Muslim.
your
They've never
question.
been given the chance. Okay, can I talk now?
No, they've
Can I
never
talk
been
now?
given the
I've
chance.
been to
2005 never
Gaza.
gave them that chance. Stop infantilizing the Palestinian
I'm
leadership and the people.
going to talk now. I'm going to speak now. You've had your time to speak your propaganda. I'll say it again. Israel has never accepted the fundamental premise that Palestinians have the right to self-determination. That's why it rejected multiple Arab League peace offers endorsed by Iran and Hamas and members of Hamas, not all of them, but some of the leadership, including Ismail Haniyeh, calling for a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. That's a big compromise for Palestinians. That's just 22% of the land that you stole, which they're willing to accept. But Israel is so hell-bent on occupying and stealing land, it won't even accept a Palestinian surrender. You don't want a Palestinian Mandela. You want to keep subjugating Palestinians.
What are you talking about? You're living in your own planet where Islamic fundamentalism does not exist in your planet.
You're the
fundamentalism doesn't exist in your planet.
stealing other
Where are
people's
you
land.
living?
You're the
Where are you
fundamentalist.
living?
Okay, time out.
Reality.
Time out. I think.
Okay,
I think.
I want
Hang on, no, hang on. We've reached a point when all four of you are trying to talk at the same time. That probably seems to me a good moment to bring this to an end. I have to say, I've done a lot of debates on this in the last year. This has been one of the best because I honestly believe that all of you are coming at this from your own perspectives. You're passionate, you're articulate about it, you care, and ultimately we all want the same thing, which is peace. But I appreciate you all coming together today and debating it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now are the Lebanese-American journalist Rania Khalek, the Israeli columnist Haratz Gideon Levy, the legal scholar and author of War Against the Jews, Alan Dershowitz. Let me start with you, Alan Dershowitz, if I may. On the legality issue of what happened in the last few days with the deliberate explosion of thousands of pages, two-way radios, electronic equipment, and so on, I've seen eminent legal brains on this arguing quite vehemently that this has entered the realm of illegal booby trapping, endangering the lives and taking the lives, as it turned out, of civilians. What is your view about the legality of this mass targeting of electronic devices?
It's not even a close question. There are two issues of international law distinguishing between civilians and combatants and proportionality. So a combatant is somebody who gets a communication device from a terrorist organization. So everyone who had that communication device is a combatant. And then the question is proportionality. You know that some civilians will be killed. The general ratio that's been acceptable around the world is about 4-to-1. That is 4 civilians killed for every combatant. That was the rule in Iraq. That was the rule in Afghanistan. That's what America did. That's what Israel did. In Gaza, it's been approximately 2-to-1, the best ratio of any country fighting urban war where civilians are used as human shields. When it comes to the devices, the ratio is far, far better. A tiny percentage of the people killed were civilians. The vast, vast majority were combatants. So this is probably the best example in modern warfare history of proportionality and of fewer civilians being killed in comparison to the combatants. So Israel should be praised from a legal point of view, from a moral point of view, and from a tactical point of view. And the attacks on Israel are all a reflection of a double standard weaponization of the legal system that hurts the rule of law because it makes it clear that the rule of law is just being used selectively against the nation state of the Jewish people. This is not even a close question. Anybody who says that Israel violated the rules of law with these explosive devices simply is being discriminatory and wrong. It's not a close question legally.
Okay, before I go to Rania, just a question that sprung to my mind as you were talking there. If Israel has the capability to do this in the way that they did it in Lebanon, why couldn't they have gone after Hamas in the same way in Gaza?
Well, because the Gazans, the Hamas doesn't use the same kind of communication devices. I wish they could. If they had gotten Sinwar on a telephone, that would have been the end of the war. The war would be over. Remember that as soon as Sinwar surrenders, as soon as Gaza lays down its arms, as soon as Hamas lays down its arms, the war is over. As soon as Hezbollah stops firing rockets, the war is over. Israel cannot do anything to stop the war. All it can do is lay down its arms and open itself up to a repeat of October 7th, which Hamas has pledged to do, or a repeat of October 8th, which Hezbollah has pledged to do. Let's apply the same standard to Israel as the United States applied after 9/11, as the allies in NATO applied. And as long as you apply a single standard to Israel, you'll see that it's been doing the right thing. I wish that Israel could have done that in Gaza and the war would be over, but technologically it's not been possible. Israel has used every possible technology to try to get Sinwar, but Sinwar surrounds himself with hostages. As soon as Israel got close to rescuing an American citizen and 5 other hostages, the Hamas put bullets in the back of their head and killed them. That's the kind of enemy that Israel is dealing with, and I would hope the world realizes that if it's allowed to continue in Israel, if Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran are allowed to continue their terrorism in Israel, it's coming to a theater near you. Iran will not stop at Israel. They want to continue what they've done to Iraq, to Lebanon, to Yemen, and bring it to Europe and bring it to the United States. So Israel is fighting for all Western democracies, not just for the defense of its own people.
Let me bring in Ron, who's been waiting patiently. What's your response to Alan Dershowitz?
Well, you know, Alan Dershowitz has spent his entire career justifying Israel murdering Arab children. That's when he's not busy defending pedophiles and rapists like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. So I'm not surprised that he's come on this program
personal
today
attacks
to defend
now.
terrorist attacks. Let me finish, Alan.
Let's stay away from the personal attacks and get to the merits. But you're not going to attack me personally for being a defense lawyer. I defend Arabs. I defend Muslims. I have defended communists. I've defended Nazis. I'm a defense lawyer. And please stop making personal attacks on me and get to the merits if you have anything to say on the merits. So far, you said nothing on the merits. It's just been a personal attack, which you ought to be ashamed of.
All right. I'm not ashamed of saying what I just said. It's objectively true. That said, you did just justify what Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, called an act of terrorism, Israel blowing up cellular devices. And we should all be concerned with that standard Israel set. Because by your logic, Alan, does that make it okay to blow up the cellular devices of Israeli soldiers who are off duty, far from any battlefield, going about their daily lives with their kids in grocery stores, in hospitals? That is what Israel did to Lebanon last week.
That would be legal.
We know that would be called a terrorist attack if it happened.
That would be legal under the law.
And then,
let
me just say, I am very upset right now. I am very upset right now because Israel has just murdered 300 of my fellow countrymen in Lebanon in an indiscriminate carpet bombing campaign based on lies. I have people calling me, telling me the horrors they're experiencing at this very moment under Israeli bombardment.
Stop firing rockets.
And
stop firing rockets and it will end. That's all. Just stop firing at Israeli communities and civilians and it will end. It's all Hezbollah's fault.
I mean, Rania, let me ask you. Hang on. Let me ask.
8, thousands of
let me ask you a question. Rania, let me ask you a question. You don't dispute, presumably, that Hezbollah has spent the last year firing rockets into Israel, do you? You don't dispute.
Of course, she disputes it. Of course, she disputes it.
Well, let me ask you.
The truth from
let me ask you directly.
I came on here to talk about Lebanon. If Alan's going to continue to interrupt me and not let me speak,
no, I just asked you a question.
Would you like me to answer your question, or are we going to let Alan talk?
No, I've asked you a question. You respond to me.
On October 8th, Hezbollah started firing at Israel in solidarity with Palestinians. And since then, we've heard from Hezbollah repeatedly say they will stop firing when Israel stops its aggression on Gaza. Israel has repeatedly refused to stop its aggression on Gaza, and things have escalated in the north. And I'll also say that, and this is according to the BBC, 80% of the cross-border attacks have actually gone from Israel to Lebanon. This is a two-way fight taking place.
Okay, but let me ask you. After what you just said, hang on. What you just said was interesting. So you concede that Hezbollah on October the 8th, the day after Israel suffers its most horrific attack on its people since the Holocaust, something which, if you extrapolated it to the population of America, is like 30 or 40 9/11s, that the very next day, Hezbollah decides to launch a rocket attack on Israel. In what possible world is that something that you would not expect Israel to defend extremely aggressively, given they've just endured this appalling terrorist attack?
I mean, Piers, I can't believe you just called it a Holocaust. That's actually offensive to
I
the
didn't
Holocaust.
call it. I called.
We can talk about.
No, sorry, don't
you said
misquote
the worst
me.
attack
Hang
since
on,
the
Rania.
Holocaust. That's
To be
offensive to the Holocaust.
I said it was the worst attack on people of Jewish faith since the Holocaust of the Second World War. That's what I said.
She defends it. She defends it. She
That's
thinks
what I
it was
said.
a
Just to be
good thing,
clear,
October
that was
7th.
what I said.
Yeah.
So my point, though, is you accept that Hezbollah launched these rockets literally hours after Israel has suffered this heinous terrorist attack. You know, of course they're going to defend themselves. Why wouldn't they? Any country in the world in that situation would defend itself. And it wasn't an attack.
Well, I'd like to ask you, at what point do Arabs get the right to defend themselves? At what point does our security matter? Israel has spent the last almost 12 months carrying out a genocide in Gaza. They've killed over 41,000 people, and we all know that's a huge underestimate. Over 16,000 children.
That one?
Just
Who
today,
started that
Israel
war?
has killed
Who
300
started that
Lebanese
war?
people, including 21
Who
Lebanese
started that
children.
war?
At what point do we get to defend ourselves? And Alan, come on, Israel's been massacring and occupying and terrorizing its neighbors for the past 76 years. Israel needs to stop terrorizing its neighbors, stop being an apartheid settler colony, and maybe its neighbors won't fire at it because its neighbors are defending themselves against an invading
All right, let me bring in.
Okay,
let me bring in Gideon to be waiting very patiently. Gideon Levy from Haaretz.
Yeah.
Gideon, you've heard both sides here expressed very forcefully. What is your overview of where we are now? Because it seems from where we are, I'm currently in London, but it seems to the outside world that Israel is basically ramping up for a full-fledged war with Hezbollah in Lebanon at the same time that it's still conducting a full-fledged war with Hamas in Gaza.
Absolutely. You see, the main problem is that under the excuse or under the umbrella of self-defense, which in many cases is justified, Israel thinks that it has the right to do whatever it wants. The 7th of October enabled Israel to go wild in Gaza, to cross any possible legal or moral border, and to kill 41,000 people. Why? Because of the 7th of October. After the 7th of October, we have the right to do whatever we want, and nobody will tell you, you heard the propaganda of the ambassador. Same now with Hezbollah. Hezbollah launched rockets on Israel. We have to defend itself. Until here, very well. But because we are defending ourselves, we have the right to do whatever we want. For example, the devices. For example, to kill today almost 300 people in one day. Is there a limit? I would like just to ask you one thing, Piers, and please answer with honesty.
Yeah.
If Hezbollah would have spread those devices in Israel to soldiers, and hundreds of people would have got blind out of it, how would the world react after it? What would you say about those terrorists, about those monsters who do such things? Why, when Israel is doing, it's always justified. Whatever it does, it's always justified by self-defense.
Exactly
Well, I would say, okay, I would say, let me give my response, Alan. I mean, my response to that would be, as I said to the ambassador, there are very serious concerns about whether that was legal, first of all. But secondly, as we just heard from Rania, when Hezbollah chose on October the 8th, when Israel was on its knees from this appalling a monstrous terror attack on its people, with 1,200 people slaughtered, nearly 7,000 more wounded, many of them irreparably for the rest of their lives with terrible injuries. When Hezbollah decided their response to that, before Israel had done anything, was to fire a lot of rockets in solidarity with these terrorists into Israel, then in that moment they made a calculation, and Israel was always going to respond, as Hamas knew it would respond to what they did on October the 7th. And the question for me has always been proportionality. You know, what is proportional? I don't have the answer, but I've asked everybody I can that question because it seems to me that is at the heart of this. Israel has a right to defend itself, but at what level? So just, Alan, I'll come to you in a second, but Gideon, you know, that is my honest answer. You know, I think you raise a very good point, which I'll put to Alan in a moment. But if this had been an attack on 3,000 people in Israel, or say 95% IDF, blinding and wounding and killing a lot of them, I think there would have been a lot of global outrage. Yes, I do. But that depends how you categorize Hezbollah against the IDF. And maybe I can come to Alan for that. I mean, Alan, it's a good question from Gideon, isn't it? I mean, if it was the other way round, what would you have said?
Well, first, the legal issue is clear. You are allowed to attack an Israeli soldier while he's sleeping or while he's shopping, as long as it doesn't create a disproportionate impact on civilian population.
So you would have found that, just to be clear, it's important, Alan. It's important.
Legally.
To be clear,
legally,
from a legal point of view, you would have had no argument if Hezbollah had done that to 3,000 members of the IDF in Israel.
Israeli soldiers, yes. Now, to get one soldier, you can't kill 3 children. To get a commander, you can kill 2 or 3 civilians. There is an answer to the proportionality. We look at history. We look at what America did in Afghanistan and Iraq. We look at what Great Britain did, what France did. And we have a history of proportionality. And so, yes, the answer is that if a person is a combatant, it doesn't matter whether they're sleeping, whether they're cooks, or whether they're machine gun operators. If they're a combatant, they're a target. Once they are a target, you have to make sure that when you kill them or wound them, you're not creating disproportionate impact on civilians. What happened with the events last week is that many combatants were killed and a teeny number of non-combatants were killed. It was the best example of proportionality in the history of modern warfare.
Why is it, Alan? Why is the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights saying that what happened?
It's very simple.
What happened was a war crime.
Because Abba Eban said many years ago, if the United Nations introduced a resolution that the earth was flat and that Israel would flatten it, it would win 144 to 22 with 43 abstentions. That's been the history of the United Nations. It's been the history of left-wing academics. It's the history of your Lebanese person here who says the original sin of Israel, that it can never be forgiven for, is creating a Jewish state in the midst of an Arab country. It's 1948 that she is complaining about.
Okay.
She says the original crime was 1948.
Yes. I'm going to bring Ronnie back in a moment.
Is
Gideon,
acceptable.
let me get Gideon's response to what Alan just said, please.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel an overdose of propaganda, first the ambassador and then Ellen. You see, Israel will always stick to the fact that it is the victim. Whatever happens, Israel is the victim. 41,000 people killed in Gaza, and this is
how many of them are combatants?
How can...
Wait a minute. How many?
Just a second.
How many of the 41,000 are civilians? How many are combatants?
I'll tell you exactly.
You haven't mentioned. I'll tell you exactly.
I'll tell you. No, but let me first
But
answer.
don't say 41,000.
of
What?
17,000 of them were children. Children are innocent.
Okay.
Always.
So
If you can live in peace,
look at those
you can live in peace. No, let me finish now. I didn't interrupt you. If you can live in peace with
that.
No, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Let others talk. If you can live in peace with 17,000 children, you have a problem. I cannot live in peace with 17,000 children killed. You cannot live with it in peace.
Point.
But let me finish.
You
no.
said 17,000 combatants were killed. 17,000
children.
Isn't the point? Okay, let me interrupt here because
let's talk about
we're talking over each other. Don't talk over each other.
Let me finish.
Here's the point I would make, Gideon.
But I would like.
Finish your point,
yes,
Gideon, then I'm going to say something.
Take it. Yes.
Finish your point,
Gideon.
Gideon.
Take it. Yes. I want just to raise another point because it is important. We are after 1 year in Gaza, which was a catastrophe for all parties. Israel achieved nothing in this war. Israel's position today, in any parameter, is much worse than before this war. You name it.
What should they have done?
Security, economically,
What should they have
it's
done?
a pariah
Lay
state.
down their arms? What
Just
should they have done?
let me finish.
Sing kumbaya with Hamas?
Now Israel, now Israel is aiming to do the very same thing in Lebanon, not learning one lesson.
them
But Israel's
stop
okay.
firing.
Gideon, Israel's response would be that no, actually, we have managed to massively dismantle Hamas's ability to operate as terrorists. We've destroyed many of the
We'll
tunnels.
meet you in 2
We've
years.
killed
Let's
thousands
meet
of
in
terrorists.
2 years and we'll see.
Well, okay, but I'm just
Let's
saying what their
we'll see
argument
and
is.
Now, if you listen to this guy, what he have said, he is making threats that what? Give them another 2 years and let's see what will happen. This guy here is very, very one-sided. He is just bringing up how many children have been caught in crossfiring. He cannot blame Israel for those deaths of all those Palestinians. He has to blame Hamas. Hamas are the ones who took those children and women and all those civilian, Gazan civilian, to protect themselves as human shield. And they are firing upon the Israelis, the IDF, and upon the Israel nation. What does he expect? What does he really expect the IDF to do? He is just one-sided. He wants the world to see you cannot compare how many died. That is the fault and to be blamed by Hamas and not the Israelis, not the IDF. You got it all wrong. You're obsessed with a lot of nonsense in your brain. Don't be one-sided. Don't be blind. Why at the very beginning you did not come out and ask all the protesters around the world to go after Hamas and demand them that they release all the hostages, let them go, so we wouldn't have all the destruction that have occurred in Gaza today. Yet, Lebanon never learned. The Hezbollahs, they never learned what took place in Gaza. On the 8th of October 2023, they started a fire at Israel. What do you expect the Israeli, the IDF to do now? Not to go after them? You are stating how many died first day? Why didn't you protest from the very beginning on the 8th of October 2023 for Lebanon, Hezbollah, to stop their nonsense? Why didn't you do that? Why are you jumping on this show? Why? You could have done that so we wouldn't have any war. All this destruction, what is happening today. Israel has the right at all time to defend themselves. You are backward. You cannot see further than your nose. You just blah, 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 blah talk. You and your female partner there against Israel. Israel is doing everything that is being justified. Thank you.
Let's meet in 2 years and we'll see.
Well, okay, but I'm just
Let's
saying
meet
what
in 2 years.
I'm saying what their argument. I'm saying what their argument is.
What we created.
I'm saying what their
on.
argument would be. Brania, over to you.
Yeah, but I will answer to this argument.
to what
Let's
you just
meet in
said.
2 years.
Okay, we'll do that. Ronnie?
Well, I just want to answer to what Piers just said about Israel dismantling. When you talk about these groups that you call terrorist organizations, you call Hamas terrorists, Hezbollah terrorists. Alan says Israel's just surrounded from everywhere. Everybody hates them and they're always throwing rockets at them. Where do these groups come from?
You don't think
Take
they're
Hezbollah,
terrorists?
for example.
You don't think
okay,
they're
Alan,
terrorists?
seriously? You make it so impossible to come on this program. Let me finish my point. You get to talk 5 minutes uninterrupted and let me have my moment to talk. And then you can accuse me of all kinds of things, okay? Let's talk about where Hezbollah comes from. Hezbollah emerged, it's Lebanese people, who emerged in the mid 1980s because Israel viciously invaded and occupied Lebanon. I mean, that invasion and occupation was so horrific. Ronald Reagan called up the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin at the time,
right?
and told him to stop carrying out what Ronald Reagan referred to as a Holocaust on Beirut. That is how vicious the Israeli invasion and occupation was. And under those conditions emerged a group of Lebanese people who picked up arms to defend their homes and land from occupation, and that's how you get Hezbollah. And they kicked the Israelis out in 2000. And since then, they have been seen by many Lebanese. You don't have to agree with it. I'm telling you the reality of the situation. I live in Lebanon. I know. Since then, they have been seen by many Lebanese as a force of protection against further Israeli invasions of Lebanon. And I'll also remind you, Hezbollah has never invaded Israel. Israel has repeatedly invaded Lebanon. The same goes for Hamas, by the way. Where did Hamas come from?
They haven't sent rockets?
Hamas is a group of Palestinians who picked up arms to defend their people against Israeli aggression. So if you want the aggression against Israel to stop, if you can even call it aggression, if you want that to stop, Israel needs to stop invading, occupying, and massacring its neighbors. People in your neighborhood are not going to like you if you continue to kill their families and steal their homes and land. It's really basic.
So let's turn to Gaza. Let's turn to Gaza. In 2005, every single Israeli, dead and alive, they actually dug up the bodies. Every single Israeli left Gaza. Gaza could have become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. There was not an occupation. There was not a single soldier. And then Hamas took over and fired 6,000 rockets in a very short period of time. If Gaza had just decided to use all the money they got from Europe, built a beautiful port, there could be peace. But Hamas decided to invade Israel, attack Israel, culminating on October 7th. But for years, there were tens of thousands of rockets that came in. Of course, Israel's going to defend itself. You say Hezbollah's never invaded Israel. Thousands of rockets. They have 100,000 rockets aimed at Israel's midsection. An invasion doesn't require a troop. It requires a rocket. So Israel has been defending itself from the day it came into existence in 1948. There could have been a wonderful Palestinian state and a tiny little Israeli state. And all the Arab countries decided to conduct a genocidal war to destroy the nation state of the Jewish people. And Israel's been fighting for its very survival ever since. So let's get real here.
Okay,
if Israel laid down his arms, there would be genocide.
Okay,
if the Arabs laid down their arms, there would be peace.
Okay, let me just ask Gideon before we...
I would like the world to listen to this young Turk, Cenk Uygur. Listen to what he is saying and his body language. I think he's insane, and I think he cannot see further than his nose. He's a journalist, but he's very, very much one-sided. Listen carefully what he will say about Iran and Hezbollah. Please pay keen attention to what he is saying.
The Israeli representative pretended that Hezbollah is attacking Israel out of nowhere for no reason at all. Just like, I don't know why they could be possibly just, attacking us when we have done nothing wrong to Hezbollah or to Palestinian territories or anything. I don't know. I mean, it's so absurd. It's hard to wrap your mind around the propaganda that they tell people. I don't know if in Israel they believe that like all their enemies just hate Jews for no reason, and these wild anti-Semites are just attacking them. When poor Israel, they've done nothing wrong. They've only occupied 5.5 million people and put them in open air camps for 57 years. They only knocked down 70% of the buildings in Gaza and displaced 95% of the citizens and killed 41,000 people. Poor Israel. They're tiny little David against this Goliath Palestinians that keep oppressing them. And now Hezbollah, evil, monstrous, terrorist Hezbollah, for no reason at all, picking on poor little Israel again. So now let me tell you the reality, because that's if you believe that fantasy tale, you'll believe anything. So in reality, Hezbollah is doing this because of the occupation. They only say it in every single statement that they make, and it is 100% because Israel is occupying Gaza and the West Bank. And has Hezbollah been firing rockets into Israel? Definitely. And they started on October 8th. They were not part of the October 7th attacks, but once Israel started striking back, Hezbollah joined in retaliation. Are they allied with Iran? Yes. Are they allied in some ways with Hamas? Yes. Okay. So should they fire rockets into Israel? No, of course not. Now, how did Israel react, and what were the different things that happened? First of all, Hezbollah's rockets barely do any damage at all for 11 months. There was one rocket, according to Israel, that got through Iron Dome and killed those 12 Druze kids, which is an abomination, okay? And so I don't want their rockets launched. I don't want them hitting anyone. I don't want anyone dying in Israel or in Lebanon or anywhere, okay? Now, by the way, Israel says that was Hezbollah. There were conflicting reports. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's not like Hezbollah wouldn't do it. They fire rockets in all the time, okay? So, so let's say that you grant all of that. Now, what has Israel been doing in return? So, first of all, there was the assassination that they did in Beirut. That's the capital of Lebanon. They did a couple of bombings, and they took out some of the Hezbollah leaders. So they're bombing in a foreign capital and taking out their leaders. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that does massive damage. Then when Hezbollah says, well, obviously we have to retaliate. You just murdered some of our top leaders, and you've been, attacking us in all these different ways. Counterattacking, you could say, if you're from Israel, right? Hezbollah is firing the rockets. So then at that point they go, okay, you know what? Before you even do your retaliatory strike, we're going to do a preemptive strike. So then Israel hits them again. So far they've hit them twice without Hezbollah officially responding. Now, isn't that weird? Because Hezbollah is firing rockets all the time. So what does Israel mean by a preemptive strike before Hezbollah actually responds? Hezbollah, quote unquote, responds all the time. Because what that means is we know that the normal responses from Hezbollah is basically marketing, internal marketing in the Muslim world, in Lebanon, and in their own ranks, because Hezbollah knows they're not going to hit anything, and we know they're not going to hit anything. When they actually try to hit something, we did a preemptive strike, because that one was real. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not to say that the rockets don't exist. It's that both sides know that under normal situations, Hezbollah's rockets do nothing at all, and Israel's not at all concerned about it. They moved 70,000 people out of the border areas, but overall, the rockets are not getting through. I mean, 1 in 11 months, maybe, okay? So now, after the preemptive strike, Hezbollah finally does a retaliatory strike that's real, okay? It fails, but it was a real attempt to hit Israel, okay? So now it's 2-1. Then you have the pager explosions. Mm-hmm. Then you have the walkie-talkie explosions. Now it's 4-1 on real strikes of Israel versus Hezbollah. And now, Hezbollah says, okay, now we're going to really retaliate, right? And so they hit him again. They do the artillery and the airstrikes that Anna just described today. So now it's 5-6-1 in terms of strikes that could do damage. And every strike by Israel does damage because they have a real military.
Yeah, and the U.S. backing them and providing them with weapons, which is also part of the reason why the retaliation that you'll see from both Hezbollah and a country like Iran, which has, in my opinion, even more of a military capacity and capability. The reason why those retaliations are so weak is because they don't want this to escalate into a broader regional war.
That's the most important point, guys. Because now when you look at what's coming next is not going to be fake. What Hezbollah and Iran are going to do next is going to be very real, okay? So you can tell the difference between fake and real based on the statements that they put out there, how America responds to it, how security experts respond to it. When they're doing the fake strikes, America goes, whew. America goes, oh, that was not bad. Okay, good. They're not escalating. America will say that, right? And then they'll turn to Israel and say, please don't escalate. Please don't escalate. And Israel will go and spit right in the face of the American representative and escalate 6 times over. So guys, the most important strike out of all of those was the pager strike. Why? I mean, I just listed you a huge list, let alone the endless ineffective rockets by Hezbollah. The reason that's what the most important is right before then, Israel had a decision to make that they pushed off for as long as humanly possible. Are you going to sign the ceasefire or are you not? Because if they sign the ceasefire, then Hezbollah and Iran don't even Iran's still waiting to retaliate for another strike that Israel did in Tehran. and an assassination there, right? So Iran has not done a major retaliation. They tried one where they were like, wink, wink, we are coming. Here's our drones. That was a purposely ineffective one because they didn't want to escalate. So now, when the pager thing happened, and you heard Nasrallah say it there, it crossed all red lines. That is Israel declaring war. We are not going to do a ceasefire. We are not going to do a peace deal. We're just going to invade you. We're going to do endless bombings. And now the last part, Anna, not only it wasn't just your words. The Israeli spokespeople said, our ground troops have not crossed into Lebanon yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so look, guys. If you're Israeli, you're not going to listen to any of this. You're going to say, they're savage terrorist Muslims that are firing rockets at us all the time. They're pea shooters, they're slingshots, but I don't care. I hate them. They're guilty by definition, right? But for the rest of us, there's no question that Israel is trying to agitate for a much larger war. They have done endless, significant strikes. And by the way, I didn't even get into Damascus. 3 foreign capitals they have attacked recently.
Yep.
And no matter how overwhelming the evidence is, the minute that Hezbollah or Iran retaliates in a real way, you notice they keep throwing rockets and America doesn't really care that much because, as I said, it doesn't work and everybody knows it's not going to work. But if they have a real retaliatory strike, and I don't know that they do, and they launch it, all of American media and the American government will flip in a minute and pretend that poor Israel got attacked for no reason. Oh my God, these bloodthirsty, savage, violent Muslims.
I need to understand, okay, so if you do support what the current Israeli government is doing by escalating this new front in this war, what is the end goal? Like, what are they trying to accomplish here? I know what they're saying they're trying to accomplish. We want Israelis to be able to go back to their homes. Hezbollah is a problem. Okay, so are they going to level Lebanon?
Yeah.
Like how, okay, are they really? They're going to do that too?
Yeah.
This is a disaster.
Okay, so
of epic proportions.
Now, look, everything we just told you.
Do they think that they're going to be safer in that part of the world after they do that?
Some of them do, yeah. Okay,
well, they're wrong.
Well, of course they're wrong. So.
Let's say, first of all, the war between Israel and Hezbollah did not start just last week by the Pager attack or even by the Beirut attack. The war has already been going on since the 8th of October last year. One day after October 7 happened, Hezbollah started to attack Israel, and Israel had to respond. Of course, it was not as intense as we are seeing right now. We can safely say that the two parties were committed to keep the rules of engagement, to clash with each other, but keeping in mind that there is a threshold that they should not pass. What happened recently especially after the attack on the football court by Hezbollah in northern Israel. After that, the war between Israel and Hezbollah started to take a very serious shift or a very serious momentum toward this escalation. And the Pager's attack is just one sign of this escalation. I don't think this will calm down anytime soon. From Hezbollah perspective, they are now the forefront of Iran. They feel compelled to take revenge for the assassination of Haniyeh, for the assassination of some of their leaders also. From Israel's perspective, Israel feels like there is some kind of unfinished war between Israel and Hezbollah that happened in 2006.
and did not end with either party really winning the war at that time. So Israel feels that it needs, right now, is somehow compelled to complete this war and make sure that Hezbollah is fully defeated. Also, it's very important to think of it in terms of what's happening in Gaza, because as all Hezbollah leaders are saying, including Hassan Nasrallah himself, they always tie what they are doing with Israel in the north, or their attacks on Israel in the north, to Israel operations in Gaza. So somehow these two are linked, because defeating Hamas must be paralleled with defeating Hezbollah if Israel really wants to have a more secure and more stable future. Look, if we continued on this escalation ladder, at one point or another, Israel will have to do a ground operation. But of course, Israel should right now do everything possible to avoid this ground operation for several reasons. One, it's a very high cost on Israel. Iran is not fighting with its own soldiers. Iran is fighting with proxies, with people that are disposable, with militants, I mean, that are disposable. But Israel is fighting with its own people, with its own youth, with its own soldiers. So it's a very high cost on Israel. So Israel should do everything it can, at this stage at least, to avoid a land operation in the north. Also, it's a high cost on the population on the north, actually. It's all the threats they have gone through in the past few months, the displacement of many Israeli citizens in the north, all these things that should be taken into consideration. However, if Israel has to go to the point that it really has to do this land operation, I think Israel is already ready to do that. We, in the past few days, we've seen tanks moving from the south to the north of Israel, which means Israel is already preparing for this scenario. How Israel can control Hezbollah without a land operation, I think these smart, technologically advanced ways of attacking Hezbollah is already leading to the defeat of Hezbollah in a very cinematic way that nobody expected, including even the United States, the biggest security ally for Israel. And also, I think one day history will mention this as, will give full credit to Israel for starting something really new in this type of warfare. So I think Israel needs to make use of its technological capabilities, technological comparative advantage, I would say, in order to attack Hezbollah. I think the pager attacks that happened recently and the walkie-talkies and so has already led to disruption in the communication system of Hezbollah, and thus is making it even harder on Hezbollah to operate right now, which is a step in the right direction. So now it feels, first of all, let me tell you, okay, Hezbollah is not popular neither in Lebanon nor in Arab countries. You will be surprised by how many people in the Arab world, in almost all the Arab countries, are very excited to see Hezbollah being defeated by Israel, are very excited by seeing Israel strong enough to block Hezbollah at this stage from going further, or block, let's say, not Hezbollah, block Iran in the form of Hezbollah from going further. And this tells you that Hezbollah is somehow isolated in this situation. It cannot rely, for example, on the Lebanese people to give them intelligence about a potential Israeli approaching the borders, potential Israeli attack of some kind or so. So they will remain isolated. Now their communication system is damaged because of the pagers attack. Israel can easily, and has done this several times, target the leaders at their homes, at their hideouts, at places that no one expected. And also in all the attacks that Israel made so far in Lebanon, inside Lebanon, I mean, at Hezbollah operatives, it was very careful not to harm civilians in the process, which is also a good indication that very little of Lebanese people and very little of Arabs would want to show support to Hezbollah in any way, similar, for example, to what happened in Gaza with Hamas.